Let's just say the devil made me do it.
Hello, fiends! Tieflings have catapulted themselves from obscure pick back when they were introduced in 1994 to one of the most popular options for players in 5e to literally a core race in the core rulebooks that Wizards are about to release. How do I know that? Well, because they sent it to me. That's right, Mr. Dungeon and Mr. Dragon themselves sent me the upcoming PHB, and more specifically the new version of everyone, and not so everyone's, favorite edgy boys. And we're gonna look at the old Tiefling, the brand new never seen before Tiefling, and we're gonna do what we do best here. We're gonna give it a twist that you can take home in this brand new episode of D&D with a Twist. Tiefling Edition, Part 2, Fiendish Boogaloo. So some of the real ones, the OGs, might remember I did a video on Tieflings, literally as I started my channel. It's the third video. That video is now close to a whole million views. Terrifying. In that ancient video, where I sound like I'm recording at 2 a.m. and I don't want to wake up my parents, even though I recorded that when I lived alone, I explain why Tieflings have become as popular as they are now. We're not gonna do that again. You can watch the ancient video if you feel like knowing. No. As I said, in this video, I got to see and touch and feel and smell and whatever. Mr. Dungeons and Mr. Dragons and their friends, the beachy wizards, asked if they could sponsor this video so I could get a preview of how Tieflings are gonna look and play and work in these brand new core books they are putting out in 2024. And I'm a Tiefling enjoyer, so of course I said yes. I wanna see so bad, and we're gonna dive straight into these Tieflings. Let's rephrase that. We're gonna analyze these new Tieflings, but to do so, we gotta understand where we started, what Tieflings became in 5e, and what they're going to be in the future. And spoiler alert, I have thoughts. So first off, don't let any of these people that cosplay as experts on the game tell you that Tieflings are a new thing in D&D. Tieflings have been around since 1994. That's literally as old as my human familiar. Aw, look at him. It feels like I summoned him from the ether yesterday. Stop showing people on the internet pictures of me as a baby. Oh, yeah. Why am I bothering with the research? Human familiar. Human familiar. This is a tax write-off now. Okay, so I did some research. Tieflings were introduced to the world in 1994, along with The Lion King, Tonya Harding's creative take on the Olympics, Nelson Mandela's creation of the Mandela Effect, and me. Happy birthday to you. They were introduced in the second edition with Planescape, which is also in 5e. They were sold as human mixed with something else. Yep. That vague. They initially didn't even make it clear that the something else was fiends. They clarified this later on, but specified that they were not half fiends or cambions, which are what happens when the succubus wins at the Intrusive Thoughts game. The Gaslight Gatekeeping boss babe that was the best part of Will's story in Baldur's Gate 3 is one of these. She's not a Tiefling. The Tiefling's fiendish ancestry is further up the family tree. Think less son of Satan and more satanic great-grandma. Tieflings at this time were very much a thing called plane-touched, which is people that are specifically tied to a plane. This aspect of their design will be gradually erased away like a pencil stain, starting in 3rd edition, where they were introduced to the Forgotten Realms, taking them away from the Planescape limbo they were designed in and into vanilla D&D. Vanilla D&D makes it sound like this is an MMO or something, but you know, the Forgotten Realms are very much vanilla D&D. Feyre and Tanaruk Tieflings. No, I don't know how these are pronounced. I tried to find it. Don't tell the hat. Those two were also introduced here. Feyre and Tanaruk are for elves and orcs what Tieflings are to humans, except these tend to be much more evil. But it's interesting to see that Tieflianity is a thing that can happen to things other than humans. It's interesting for what comes later. Oh, I can do that too? The 3.5 edition pushes Tiefling back into the plain touch box they came from. Not much to say here, but 4th edition does something interesting by putting them back into the player's handbook. They also literally got an entire book, even if it's a tiny one, all to them. This is a sign. Tieflings were gaining power. They were getting stronger, even then, by virtue of people being weirdly horny about them, and then being, you know, actually horny. Like in a very literal sense. I feel like people don't really talk about this that much. Maybe it's because 4E gets a bad rep, but Tieflings were basically a core race in 4E. The Hat talked about this at length in the other video on Tieflings, but there is a very interesting write-up on William O'Connor, the guy that basically codified what Tieflings look like, and he goes into detail about how he went about designing them. And I quote, "I worked to give the Tiefling that sexy, dark, and gothic appeal. I carried this idea into everything about them, their clothes and equipment, elegant and deadly." This worked. And so, we come into the almost current day with 5e. Tieflings have now exploded in popularity for a myriad of reasons that the Hat goes into detail in the other video, a big one being a certain obscure little show, and the very latest official writing on Tieflings is on Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which gives Tieflings a whopping 9 different sub-races, one for each archdevil. Yeah, okay, history, we get it. You asked me to do this. Anyway, so now that we know how Tieflings happen and where they're from, we can finally get into what they're going to be. Okay, so to make a character in the current version of 5e, you do a sort of Powerpuff Girl mix of a bunch of different stuff. You throw in a race and a class. Mine are Hispanic and questionable. But for your character, it could be Elf Druid or Tiefling Warlock. Be careful, we wouldn't want to be too original. Your race decides what languages you know. And most importantly, where you get your ability score increases, with some races giving you extra strength, constitution, factually weird stuff like charisma, and iffy stuff like intelligence. Not gonna get into that. You can hold that can of worms. I don't want any near my comments. You also add a background, which basically is what your character did before they got into walking around, decimating the local fauna to save the world. Background examples are stuff like entertainer, athlete, acolyte, Waffle House employee, which is for fighters and barbarians only, and influencer. These are technically not just for flavor, but other than skill proficiencies, they are just for flavor in 5e. But not anymore. That's right, we're finally talking about the changes. This is honestly my favorite change in all I've read in the preview. In the new core rulebook, you have one single thing called an origin, and your origin basically encompasses everything. Race has been changed to species, which is, you know, what they actually are, so good. But your origin also encompasses your background. Now, instead of you being, let's say, more intelligent because you're an elf, which, yikes, your ability scores are now tied to your background. Yes, backgrounds have received a massive buff in the 2024 rulebooks. You better invest in some background right now. Backgrounds not only grant you ability score increases, but every background gives you a feat. Yes, a feat. 2 skill proficiencies and a tool proficiency. This is across the board. All backgrounds get this. This massive shift in design makes it so that we center your character's history, what they actually did with their life and where they got their skills, rather than their race or species now. Instead of knowing how to speak Minionese because they were born a minion, which never made sense even a little bit, especially for races like, I don't know, Tiefling, who are not particularly communal and can be born from non-Tiefling parents. Now, stuff like languages is something you've learned because of the life you've led. Ability score increases being tied to backgrounds makes way more sense, since it makes way more sense for you to be smart because you spend some days locked up working out of the library. More sense than you're smart because you have pointy ears. Real talk, I'm still gonna let my players put their +2 and +1s wherever they feel like, because what if you want to play a very smart pirate? But this makes way more sense than them being tied to race. So, if race has changed so much and they've lost ability score increases, what does that mean for the Tiefling? Well, as I said, the word for race is now species, and as a species, Tieflings have changed a bunch, and we'll be going through these changes in the internet's favorite format, a numbered list. So without further ado, number 1, flavor. The flavor text in 5e emphasized, among other things, which we'll get into, how much Tieflings are maligned. Now, I made an entire video as to why I think that is one of the keys to Tieflings' popularity as a race. The fact that they were perfectly set up to be woobified to hell and back. Get it? Hell. Tieflings. Anyway. Tieflings being maligned for something they have no control over makes them prime candidates for being woobies, and people love woobies. I've been following the crumbs Mr. Dungeon and Mr. Dragons have been releasing about these new books, and one of the work in progress ones for the Tiefling had flavor to the effect of, and now that so many Tieflings have been very, very good boys who went on many adventures and ate their vegetables and went to bed on time, everyone loves them now. So, can you tell I didn't like this? As someone who has been unfairly maligned for something I was born as and have no control over, watch the first 20 seconds of the video before this one to learn more, I didn't like this. Like, not even a little bit. Tieflings are appealing as heroes for the same reason the X-Men are appealing as heroes. Getting rid of this strips them of what makes them tick, what makes them, honestly, I hate this word and how overused it is, but it's what makes them empowering to people. Yeah, that and you can pick the color, and that's fun. Fortunately, the D&D gods heard my pleas, and this is completely absent in the new core rulebooks. They've gone down the middle. There's no flavor text about how Tieflings are universally hated by everybody ever, and they live in bags of garbage and eat cheese made out of rat milk, which, you know, there was a lot of that in 5e, and there's more about their choice in the matter. There's a sentence in the flavor text of the new book that sums it up perfectly. A Tiefling chooses whether to embrace or lament their fiendish legacy. And I think that's neat. It doesn't pack the same punch as genetically engineered to be a wooby and or edgelord, but it leaves the door open to that, or to people that don't want to play that. I'm always for more player and DM choice, so this is a good change in my book. Moving on from woobies and into family tree, Tieflings have gotten a baby bit of an update there. They are born in the lower planes, which I think is new, or have a fiendish ancestor who originated the horny trend. I'm kinda sad we got rid of the my grandpa made a deal with the devil and now every third cousin comes out horny, but oh well. And most importantly, guys, most importantly, there's no talk of alignments. Yes, that's right. There's no more of that. They tend towards chaotic alignments or whatever. It's done. It's done. The evil is defeated. I mean, in the species that is, it's still there in the books, but baby steps, y'all, baby steps. Okay, so flavor done for the most part. We'll get back into it a little bit. Let's move on to the big one. Number 2, legacies. Legacies are a brand new thing introduced with these new books. Remember when I moaned and whinged about them getting rid of sub-races in Monsters of the Multiverse?
That's whinging.
Well, they're back. Instead of sub-races, since races are now, say it with me y'all, species, sub-races are now legacies, and I love them. I love the Tiefling legacy so much more than the 5e ones. In 5e, with the release of Mordenkainen, Tieflings got like 72 sub-races that all link to a very specific devil. They were confusing, they felt samey, they rely on a bunch of knowledge about super specific named characters that like 90% of the player base doesn't know that well, and worst of all, they didn't do that much in terms of flavor. You just picked them for what traits each of them got you. In the new core rulebooks for 2024, Tieflings got 3 lineages. You think that's bad? It isn't. Each of these 3 is, in my opinion, miles better than anything we got in 5e for Tieflings. Y'all know how much I love the Kiss method. Keep it simple, stupid. And these lineages are that method in action. And it works great. Let's look at them. Oh god, I'm already in a number list. This happens way too often. Number A, the Infernal Legacy. The Infernal Legacy is what you think of when you think Tiefling. Smooth skin, smooth horns, golden eyes, and apparently the smell of sulfur? Like rotten eggs.
Oh, Shrek, did you do that?
Let's workshop that, guys. We were going for sexy, remember? Anyway, these are your Tieflings Tiefling. This ancestry is here to represent devils, the 9 hells, your devil's devil, the classic. The infernal ancestry states that whatever fiend got frisky with great-great-great-grandpappy was most likely a devil. It represents lawful evil, ergo the 9 hells, but also Gehenna and Acheron get a mention there. We'll do a primer on planes someday, but you know this one. This is Vanilla Tiefling, the iconic one. But what about demons? You say, as if someone liked demons better than devils in D&D.
And the devil laughs.
Well, number B. Demon enjoyers, rejoice. You get a legacy all to yourself. The Abyssal Legacy. This one is linked to the Abyss, duh. But also, we get some mention of other planes like Pandemonium and Carceri. What I love about them is how much they feel like demons and look like demons. That's right, we're finally getting clear visual distinctions between the two. Where Infernal Tieflings have smooth horns with a smooth transition between skin and horn, Abyssal ones have rough, jagged horns. The features mentioned also include fur, tusks, and peculiar scents? Like what, rotten egg again? What's up with the stink factor in these guys?
Smells like success to me.
Anyway, they look rougher, almost beastly, and I think that's sick. I hope this is a through line for all devils and demons in the new book so we can actually tell them apart finally. But I talked about 3 legacies. If one is devils and one is demons, what's the third one? Well, number C. I don't blame you for forgetting, but there's actually a third type of fiend, Yugoloths. If devils are lawful evil and demons are chaotic evil, Yugoloths are neutral evil. And they're having a moment right now in D&D with that furry looking lady in the Planescape tie-in adventure being one of them. Real talk, when it comes to fiends, I love devils, I tolerate demons, and I don't think about Yugoloths at all. Or that was until this new legacy, the Chthonic Legacy. Cannot wait to see how people who do not know how this is pronounced butcher this name. This is the legacy associated with Yugoloths, and it's probably my favorite. It almost feels Fae-esque. In the description, we get more into it, with them having the most diversity in looks. Some are described as cadaverous, but some are described as 100% baddies looking like succubi and incubi, and some are described as looking similar to night hags, which, yes, yes, I love hags so much. The art really sells this, with their horns being more like branches of a tree and them being purple. I love them. Oh my god, yeah, I can't believe it took me this long to mention it. Remember that whole thing about the writing on Tieflings being like, Tieflings are red, but some official art having them be purple? And people taking that suggestion and completely ignoring it? Well, people were right. We're eating good tonight, everybody. Technicolor Tieflings are canon. Look at that spread. Crayola is quaking. Okay, so we've talked about flavor, we've talked about legacies and their history, but what can you do as a tiefling? Well, number 3, traits. Since species are no longer tied to ability scores, thank God, they are all about traits, which is just a species-related word for abilities. Let's go through the changes. First up, size. That's right, the changes in the mom book are still in effect. Tieflings can now be small. Ooh, this makes it so Wizard of the Coast is paying me to say this. Anyway, they can be small. This makes extra sense as you can make it so a goblin or a halfling was the one that got created with the devil. Solid. Tieflings get dark vision, which of course it's D&D, but nothing about it being in shades of gray anymore. The Tieflings are Technicolor and see in Technicolor in the dark. In all the years I've been playing D&D, the whole can only see in shades of gray has not come up ever, but I'm sure someone out there is writing a Reddit post about how D&D is ruined now because Tieflings can tell what colors somebody's eyes are in the dark. F to them. Creature type and speed are always the same, blah blah blah. Let's move on to the actual fun ones. Fiendish Legacy is basically one big massive trait that changes depending on, guess. That's right, your legacy. This trait evolves, meaning you get fun stuff at level 1, level 3, and level 5. Let's look at them. Infernal Tieflings are the Charmander of Tieflings, in that they get resistance to fire and the Firebolt cantrip at level 1, and that they come from the deepest layers of hell. At level 3, they get Magical Your Mom, and at level 5, they get
Darkness?
These feel very baseline Tiefling, which makes sense for Infernal. Abyssal Tieflings, the demon ones, go with the whole beastly angle and get resistance to poison. I'm assuming because animals can be poisonous. Poison damage is notoriously bad as a damaging option since nearly every monster resists it, but it's still as a player really good to resist poison since a ton of creatures are poisonous, which is probably why the animal-esque Tieflings got this one. They also get the Poison Spray cantrip at level 1, fitting. At level 3, they get Ray of Sickness for more gross potential, and at level 5, they get Hold Person, which is one of the best spells in the game, so lucky them. I'm assuming this is because they're giving me Giga Chad Tiefling vibes, so they can just hold people. I don't know, moving on. Chthonic Tieflings, the weirdos based on Yugolots, get Necrotic Resistance, which is amazing, since most monsters that deal necrotic damage are really strong, and there is a bunch of them, nearly every undead. And as a level 1 spell, they get Wanna Come to My Place and Chill Touch at level 1. Extremely solid choice. At level 3, they get False Life, which is a very hacked spell and an amazing source of self-healing that lasts for 1 hour. And at level 5, they get Ray of Enfeeblement, which makes anything that hits really hard because big muscles completely useless. Honestly, this is by far the best one. I'm telling y'all, Chthonic Legacy is where it's at. And finally, as our final trait, Tieflings get Otherworldly Presence. You get Thaumaturgy. That's it. You get the Fanfic Eye spell. The My Eyes Change Depending on My Mood spell. The No, I Swear They're Green, They're Just Green If You Look at Them in the Sun spell. The I Close All Windows When I Enter Any Room for Fun spell. Neat. Okay, so you know as much as I do now. And overall, for me, personally, in my opinion, an improvement by a mile. Tieflings are my favorite race, or should I say species, along with dwarves. And I was really worried they were gonna strip them of what makes them so unique and so fun to build characters around. And they didn't. So what if we did? In my first Tiefling video, I made a bunch of Tiefling NPCs for y'all to use. What if for this one, we made a bunch of PCs? But what if we go above and beyond? What if we give them stat blocks and set them up for y'all to use them as playable characters or NPCs? What if we made one for each of the new lineages that are coming in 2024? Let's go. Okay, so for our first Tiefling, we gotta go with the blueprint first, the Infernal Legacy, since those are the iconic ones. Also, I love devils and I wanna have fun. Since the Infernal Legacy is the Tiefling's Tiefling, the baseline, the OG, why don't we tell a very basic Tiefling story and, at the same time, give it a twist, in honor of the new books doing exactly that? What about someone that had everything to be rejected by their family, but they didn't? And since Infernal Tieflings are related to devils, I'm thinking that contracts, secrets, and fine print are a must. What about Femme Fatale meets Spy Master? Let's go. Araceli had every reason to be disowned by her noble family led by a powerful matriarch. She was the product of a dalliance between her mother and an unknown tiefling man that left their lives as swiftly as he came. Araceli's mother had great plans for all her children, and most assume this did not include her bastard daughter, and they couldn't be more wrong. That's right, this is the twist. Araceli's mother loved and cherished her tiefling daughter just as much as the children she had with her late husband. The world, however, did not agree with this assessment. While Araceli's siblings were set up to marry the heirs of powerful families or pursued ambitious political careers, the matriarch knew that Araceli would have to make a name for herself in the shadows. She was trained as a child to deal in subterfuge, to hide her true intentions behind a pleasant smile, to become the center of attention in 1 second and pass completely unnoticed the next. Araceli learned to use her status as a tiefling and as a bastard, as well as what her mother gave her, to lull powerful people into spilling all of their secrets. After all, what did it matter to powerful lords if some tiefling bastard knew of their indiscretions or their plans? Well, it mattered a great deal when Araceli used those secrets to her advantage. Maybe it was her connections to the Hells, but she had a natural knack for contracts and deals, and, more importantly, how to twist and bend them to her advantage. With the help of her mother, Araceli rose as the leader of a network of informants and spies, but all of this came crashing down when she found her mother's body laying dead on her bed, frozen in time as she clawed at her throat with the telltale signs of poisoning nakedly on display. Araceli's mother had never shared all of her secrets with any of her children, but it was clear that one of these secrets had won her this fate. Araceli poured through her mother's writings and found a lead: her own father. It appears he might have been somehow involved in this, and Araceli will find out how, why, and take her revenge. Give Araceli high charisma, high intelligence, decent dex, make her a whisper bard, and presto, a true Infernal Legacy Tiefling, ready to gaslight, gatekeep, and girlboss her way all the way down to the 9 hells. Okay, that one's done. Abyssal next. And I think we should lean hard on demonic, on the whole beastly thing we've got going on with the legacy. But what if we subvert it? Adai stands at nearly 7 feet tall, with his massive tail that extends for another 5 feet, ending in a tuft of coarse hair. From his lower lip protrude 2 thick tusks, and his enormous rough horns jet out from both sides of his head like a bull, angled forward and ready to stab. His eyes, just like his skin, are a deep blood red, piercing from sclera's back as night. He's also the kindest person you could ever meet. Adai is basically unable to tell someone no when they ask him for anything. He is soft-spoken and shy with new people, but warms up extremely quickly to anyone that shows the smallest kindness to him. He enjoys cooking and crafting and is more of a gift giver than a gift receiver. Animals tend to congregate around him, either because they can sense his perpetually good intentions, or because he always kind of smells a bit like them. However, his extremely affable disposition did not, in fact, save him from the scorn of his peers, having to prove many times to many guards that he was a tiefling and not just an outright demon. This is what led him to join the Palace of Peculiarities, a traveling circus troupe that specializes in the unusual. Many of its members are extraplanar in nature, with fey ancestries and elemental natures being the norm there. Nobody really stands out at the palace, and everyone there understands what it's like to stand out in society. In the palace, he found work as a strongman, for obvious reasons, and bonded quickly with the cast of misfits, finding a chosen family that chose him in turn. But this is a D&D character, so disaster had to strike, and it did, in the form of a beautiful elven man, a lithe figure, hair as long as he was tall, and as white as snow, with plump lips that smiled a smile that did not reach his eyes. The elven man observed the troupe after the show one night, and without saying a word, he flicked his wrist, and suddenly, members of the troupe were bound in arcane chains. And I watched as more and more of his family was taken, disappearing right into the ground as the chains pulled them downwards, and the elf watched. Adai grabbed a mallet he used in his show and charged at the elf, but it was like swinging through air. In a second, the elf was gone, and so was most of his family. Adai travels the world now with one goal in mind: finding the elven man and the members of his troupe. He noticed something. All members taken had extraplanar blood, almost as if the elven man was collecting them. But what for? Give Adai big boy strength, big boy con, and making a big boy barbarian. I'm thinking Path of the Beast for the abyssal flavor, but I took a peek at the 2024 Barbarian Berserker and guys, it's so much better than before. Okay, so for our last one, we have the weird ones. The ones I like the best. The Chthonic Legacy. The vibe here is weird, odd-looking, Night Hag adjacent, Yugoloth coded, and apparently corpse-like. And since this is new and weird and my favorite, why don't we go all the way to mega weird? But what is weird to a tiefling? People that are literally defined as weird. Why don't we make an outcast among outcasts? Alma was always the odd dog of the family, which is quite an accomplishment in a family full of tieflings. Her parents, two well-off merchants, took any tiefling orphan they came across, and they ran into Alma on a stormy night in a dark alley. As she cackled over the dead body of a pigeon she had somehow managed to reanimate at the age of 3. Alma was the first chthonic child the couple had ever adopted, and she was a very sweet girl, and also a very, very weird girl. Even as a child, her cheeks were hollow, her eyes sunken in, her skin a sickly shade of blue, more the color of a decomposing corpse than the brilliant cobalt of some of her siblings. Her horns sprouted from her forehead and curled towards the front. They were misshapen and gray, more like branches of a dead tree than horns. Alma wanted nothing more than to fit in, and her parents and siblings loved her terribly, but they couldn't help being put off by her interests and just her general vibe. Alma loved thunderstorms and the quiet of cemeteries. When she laughed, Alma's eyes bulged out of her tiny, sallow face, and she produced a spine-chilling cackle from her throat that did not match her age. Her black hair hung limp and lifeless and was perpetually greasy, no matter how many baths she took. Her siblings teased her, as siblings do, but they loved her. The children at school, though, not so much. She scared them, and their reaction was to avoid Alma or to mess with her. Alma felt impossibly lonely and found the most loyal companion in, of all things, the dead. She had always shown an aptitude for magic, but when she found out that she could animate corpses reliably and that those corpses will stay with her forever, she plunged herself into necromancy. Humanely and ethically, of course, but this did not help her social problems. Growing up into an adult made making friends harder for Alma, as much as she tried, and she came to a conclusion. The problem was her. Or rather, the fiendish taint in her. She would travel the world, looking for what she calls a cure. Something to fix whatever's wrong with her. Something that could expunge the fiendish traits that have plagued her and kept her from forming bonds with those around her. And her undead friends will be along for the ride to keep her company. Make Alma a wizard, necromancer, duh, give her high intelligence and an abysmal charisma, pun intended, and presto, your very own self-hating, scrungly woman on a quest of self-acceptance. And those are 3 tieflings using the rules of the new core rulebooks. And talking about those books for a second, and nobody told me to say this, these are my actual thoughts from my little hat brain. I really like this PHB better than the last one. First off, as an artist, I am honestly floored at the amount of art here, how much better the book looks than the previous PHB. Every subclass gets its own art, the characters embodying each class come back in other unrelated illustrations throughout the book, so they feel like actual characters. It's beautiful. In terms of actual content, like actual design, it does not feel like it's abandoning 5e, but rather building on top of it. Very little of it feels like a departure. And from what I've seen, I'm a fan of what they've added and the changes they've made. It does not feel dumbed down, it feels streamlined. And a lot of the changes to rules as written are changes that reflect how people actually play. What I can say is that it feels like it's a book made by people that actually play the game. And for what it's worth, I like it. So if that sounds interesting after all we talked about tieflings in this, you can pre-order the book. I will leave the link in the description to the physical and digital core book bundle. It's gonna be the first link, but you can shop around for what works best for you. And God, just 1 second, look at these covers, my God. Oh, what's that? You thought I would just not give you something to take home with you? You thought I would make these 3 tieflings based on new lineages that I set up as PCs or NPCs and gave them quests for you to include in your games and not give them to you? You thought wrong. That's right, the 3 stat blocks, all 3 at different levels for these 3 tieflings are for you to use right now. These Tres horny boys have Tres stat blocks for you to take home and plop right into your games. Art included and made by moi. Do y'all like the new style? I tried to do something different this time. Anyway, but what happens if you're so surprised as to why tieflings have this much of a death grip on people? Why are they so popular, including with hats? Well, here's literally the 3rd video I ever made about why tieflings are popular, if you can stomach a much quieter and more insecure version of myself. And if you prefer your unfairly maligned species to be meatier, here's my take on half-orcs and orcs, with a bunch of D&D lore and a twist on it. Alright, go grab the edgelord by the horns. Mwah!